Hello, I am Lena Spaho, founder of Inside the Walls blog and Inside the Walls and Beyond Facebook group. I have a master's in mental health counseling, and I am here today with my guest, Sandy Freese. Sandy is a certified CBT specialist and a professional life coach. She is also certified in NLP. Sandy is a justice advocate, and she owns her own business, Victory from Chaos Coaching. Welcome today, Sandy.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to be here.
And I appreciate you coming on to talk to us today.
Thank you.
And could you start off by telling my listening audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I live in a small town in Indiana, southern Indiana. I grew up here, moved away. My life has gone, different directions. And I'm back here. I've been back here now for about 11 years. I had some rough times growing up. And that is why once I finally realized that going to weekly sessions for years was not serving me personally well, I stopped going and I found cognitive behavioral therapy. Through that and the methods and tools that I gleaned from my studies, I began to actually rebuild my self-worth and begin to heal emotionally from that. So it's a very active way to heal, which is what I needed. Beyond that, I do have my business, and it is a coaching service. I work with people who are or have been incarcerated and their family members. I also have another session, and it is for women dealing with trauma.
And that's a population, Sandy, that's, is very dear to my heart, women of trauma.
Yes.
That is a population that I would like to work with. And by the way, I don't know if I've ever told you this in our conversations, but cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is my favorite modality of therapy. So thank you for talking with me today about that.
Thank you so much.
Sandy, tell us what your Victory for Chaos, what actually do you do with that organization?
Well, I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of panel discussions. I offer sessions, to help people. I do a lot of newsletters or, things to put in newsletters and just stay very busy. I speak with people or correspond with people every single day.
Right. I know that you two have been out advocating. I know you're working on a book because you actually interviewed me for your book. And I know that your book is also talking about the mental health crisis that is the impact of incarceration. And so today I have invited you on because I would like to get into talking with you about what you have found in your research with your book. I know you've been out interviewing people that are not only incarcerated currently, but that are also on the other side of the walls that have been incarcerated and come out on the other side. And I know you're very familiar with the anxiety, PTSD, the different mental health issues that people come out of prison with or suffering from while they're on the inside of the walls. Also, I know we've discussed sometimes in length the amount of barriers to reentry that there are for people coming out. So today, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point, and I would like for you to give us an overview of what you have found as a CBT specialist and as someone who is out advocating and trying to help those who have been either incarcerated or are currently being incarcerated. So go ahead and tell my listening audience what you have found in your research.
Absolutely. First, children who are either abused physically or sexually or are neglected growing up are 50%, 50 times more likely to be incarcerated at some point in their lives. And those who have been bounced to more than 3 foster care homes are 90% more likely to be incarcerated. That's huge.
That's a high statistic, very high.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. When we talk about the trauma of being incarcerated, I'll point out a letter that I received the other day. It was from a mother who has a son that's incarcerated. And she had been calling, they live in Ohio, she had been calling the facility to check on him, to do a wellness check. And he was retaliated against because of that. He lost a tooth. His nose was busted. He wrote his mother and said, "Mom, I know you care about me, but please don't call here anymore."
Do you know, was it the staff that retaliated against him? Yeah. And see, that's the common problem when people are incarcerated. You know, you're free to tell your family whatever you want, but the problem is you may be retaliated on by staff. As you know, I went through some of that myself for blogging about what goes on inside the walls. And I think that people are afraid to speak out due to that. They see other people that speak out what happens to them. So they're like, oh, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And then they take the abuse that happens to them, which, as you well know, ends up causing traumas that on top of traumas. And we get into, you know, what's called chronic PTSD from the trauma, the layers of trauma. And it's a very harsh reality.
Yes, it is. It is, and it's hard to break free from that. You know, we were discussing reentry needs, and you know, we know that upon reentering society from incarceration, there is always that need to have a safe place to sleep, a safe place to live, hopefully without temptation of what maybe put you in prison in the first place. You know,
that's especially hard for addicts, I believe, because the chance to get back out and start back into addiction is so, you know, is so easily to do.
It is. And you know, there's so much trauma that goes on, and whether it is affecting you personally while you're incarcerated or you're seeing someone else go through something, that trauma is still yours.
Absolutely. There's a lot of violence in prison. And you witness it, you may witness your peer, you know, being violated in some way, but it still impacts you. Even if it didn't personally happen to you, you may be, you know, highly impacted from it. It's still a trauma in your life. And I think a lot of people don't realize that trauma is not just what happens to me personally. It's what I witness. It's the experiences I go through. It's the environment I may be placed in, even if I'm not being abused in that environment, but I may be seeing someone else being abused. Trauma incorporates a lot of things. And I think the more we can bring attention to that, the more people may start to understand what trauma really is.
I agree. And I've talked to several of the people that I've interviewed who said, you know, after the first few years of me fighting and not being able to stay in one facility, but being bounced, you know, they became very suicidal. Another individual lost a brother because, you know, he was actually beaten to death by COs. You know,
and did he witness this, or he found out about
it? She did. She found out. Well, there's a video. There was a video that they were caught on tape doing this.
Oh. And so the family is forced to watch a video of their loved one being beaten to death. I mean, how horrific is that? That is trauma that they'll never get over. The loss of the person's enough, but then add the trauma of the traumatic event that took the life, they'll never get over that.
They won't. And that's,
I mean, how do you even process that?
Family members as well, you know. But we think of all of these things that are very much needed. And there are some organizations out there, some nonprofit organizations and other organizations that have homes built for people reentering. And not enough, but they can also, they provide transportation. They help set up employment. They get all the paperwork together, you know, the driver's license, the birth certificates, all that. They help with all of that. But But I suggest we have to add something else to that. We have to add care for mental health upon release.
I agree 100%. You know, we've talked about in depth that when I came home last year in May, that I suffered greatly from anxiety and PTSD from the traumatic events that I had experienced while being incarcerated, really for what is a short sentence. I was a 45-month sentence, but I literally was only incarcerated because of the CARES Act. When COVID hit, I got out after 27 months of incarceration. And I remember, and I still do deal with the anxiety and the PTSD. It has gotten better since I've been home a full year now. However, I look at my situation where I have a house to come home to. I had a car to come home to. I had a husband who supports me, and I came home to many friends, my church, a huge support system. But yes, there are many women and men who are incarcerated that, especially in the case of long incarcerations, they don't have that support system or any of those asset type things to come home to, a place to live, food provided for them, you know, things like that. And so their reentry to society would be, you know, tons harder than mine. And it was not an easy reentry for me, even with all those resources. So, you know, I know the BOP is not helping people get their Social Security card, driver's license. I was talking to someone who was released not too long ago. They can't even get a bank account open because they have no ID. You know, they're having to try to, and with COVID still going on, it's hard to get ID. They don't have anything that really helps them to get their ID except for a government badge that says you were in prison. How embarrassing is that? And so the needs, the reentry needs can start out as small as just having something to prove who you are and go all the way up to where do I actually lay my head down? Where yes, do I have a roof over my head? Who is going to feed me? Yes. So the needs are huge. And I agree that there's just not enough organizations out there to meet all the needs that are people that are coming out of prison. I mean, we're over incarcerating in this nation. So, I mean, by per capita, we have a huge over incarceration issue. So absolutely, if we're over incarcerating and then those people are coming out, then that leads to us having other issues, such as a shortage of services for people once they come back outside of prison and are released. There's a shortage of help for them to help them get on their feet. Hence why we have such a high rate of recidivism in this country.
What I was just getting ready to say. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Because for one thing, you get out, you know, you don't know where you're going. So many people have been in there for so long. Right. They've lost family members. They've lost the supportive people they once had. So
also they're institutionalized. The longer you're in, people become institutionalized, and they're so used to their life being controlled that it's very hard for them to take back control of it.
Yes. Yep. In one of the interviews that I did for the book, a gentleman that had been in there for 17 years knew another person. He was only like 45 years old, but he had become so institutionalized because he had been in there for most of his life. He did not want to be released. They came to him and said, "Your time is up. You're going to be released." He said, "I don't want to go."
Wow.
So
again, and I talked with some women when I was in prison as well that had nowhere to go. And I saw several people during just the 27 months that I was locked up. I saw several ladies end up coming back. And when I asked them, like what happened, many times the response is, I didn't have any support out there. I had to go back to selling drugs to support myself. They were so mentally incapacitated when they first got out with anxiety, PTSD, whatever was going on, that they started back on drugs to numb their pain. So it is a vicious cycle. And I don't see much, at least at the federal level, and I'm sure the state is probably even worse, but I don't see much, if anything, being done to prepare people for reentry into society. And it really is a sad fact.
It's very sad, and it needs to take place way before their time to be released is there. You know, this gentleman that I was speaking of that did not want to be released was physically picked up by guards and put outside the prison, and he stood there having nowhere to go and nothing to do. And within a few months, he had thrown a glass bottle into a jewelry store and stood outside waiting, and they came back and got him, and he went back in.
Wow. So he basically purposely violated and stood there and waited to get caught so that he would actually have what they call in prison, you know, a cot, a hot meal, and a place, you know, a shower, so this is really, to me, very concerning. That story there in and of itself is just one example of what we are failing in this country to do as a society.
Absolutely. You know, being able to work with people to clear the trauma that they faced. You'll never get rid of that trauma, but there are ways to work with that trauma so that it's not controlling you.
Right. And I think that takes individual therapy or group therapy, because you have to process those traumas, and until you can fully process it, you cannot start to heal.
You cannot, and that's why I say those reentering need that so badly.
CBT would be very important, I feel like, to people suffering from that. I know because CBT does help you change your mindset. It does help you become, to look at things in a different light and to reflect back and process and get, maybe not the word finality, but at least to get some kind of closure to those traumatic events to where you can start to rebuild your life. And I just don't, the federal system and the state is not doing enough to do anything to help people get this kind of treatment once they come out of prison. I recall last year when I first came home and was suffering so bad, I kept asking the halfway house that, I was under for my ankle monitor to get me counseling. And months went by. I would ask again and ask again. And, it never happened. And so they're not in any hurry. I know inside the prison, they're not doing anything, and they're not in any hurry when people are released to help them.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
So Sandy, if you had a few minutes to tell my listening audience some of your most important takes from the research you've done and what you could see as an advocate of ways that the system could become better, what you would suggest if you were just say before Congress, even to be able to tell them, here is what, I'm seeing, I'm doing this research. Give me your highlights. Give my audience your highlights.
Absolutely. What I have found through my research, and I've done extensive research on this, is that there are so many people now that are incarcerated that are innocent. First and foremost, that has got to be addressed. Let's get these innocent people out. I think another issue is that those who work, attorneys are not getting the information, giving all the information they need to be giving to those jurors. There is so much that they're just not aware of. You cannot try a case one-sided and expect the right decision to be made.
Right.
That needs to be needs to happen. Another thing is the Brady violations, which are if the prosecutor has information that he knows could change the outcome of a case and does not pass that information on to the defendant and the defense attorney, that's a Brady violation. That comes
from the case Brady versus USA because,
Yes.
I dealt with that in my case where the prosecutor was hiding things. So and as you know, I went to a jury trial. So I totally agree with what you just said. The jury trial is not a jury of your peers. It's not a fair, I think we need professional jurors so that people are trained. If it's a financial case, you've got trained people that are non-biased, that, there's a lot, I agree, there's a lot of those changes, but go ahead. I didn't mean to stop your train of thought there.
I'm thinking, the immunity that is given to the prosecutors is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous.
Can you let my listening audience know what you mean? Because some people may not know what we're talking about, that how prosecutors have immunity.
Oh, absolutely. You can't, if you're involved in a case and the prosecutor is not being honest, is not putting all the information out there, there's nothing you can do. He cannot be charged. He's under immunity. And that's a shame, because
it really is. It's a shame.
Yes.
There are a few cases that I think have tried to break through that immunity, and really egregious cases. But I think what people don't understand, society doesn't know, is the prosecutor pretty much controls the whole thing all the way through sentencing, and and even can interfere when you're in the BOP, for that matter. I've seen cases of that where they've interfered and had people's phone taken and other things when they're actually serving their time. A prosecutor is a very powerful person in our society, yet they're held to no honest standards. They take an oath to be honest. However, many, if not most, do violate that oath because they're in it to win it. They don't care what the truth is. They just want to win another case. The truth is irrelevant.
Yes, and I believe also we need, judges need term limits, because judges can stay a judge as long as they choose to stay a judge. And oftentimes, in my studies and in my conversations with others, I have found certain judges, when they're ready to step down, they'll put a family member in his or her place.
Wow.
So they're automatically feeling exactly the same, as far as morality and ethics and all of that. So that's not helping the system. It's just not ethical as far as.
Wow, that's something I didn't even know. So wow, thanks for bringing that point up.
Yeah. Well, I just think.
So as far as mental health goes, what would you suggest that as a society that we look at as far as those incarcerated and released from prison? What is it that you think society needs to be offering these people? What would you suggest that is put into place to help?
I believe some of these nonprofit organizations that are dealing specifically with reentry need to get accredited people on board, because through the nonprofit or other businesses of like mind that can get grants and funding, they can pay these coaches and these people through the grant money that they're getting, because those reentering society cannot afford this counseling.
Right.
It's unaffordable.
And there needs to be something set up. I know in the federal system, there is a clause that says if you cannot afford it, you should be able to pay a $10 copay. However, that's them sending you to someone who is a very overloaded person, because they have so many people they're trying to see. They're doing things for pretrial. They're doing things for POs. So I'm not really sure there's enough of those people to go around in any district. At least, that's what it appears to me. I'm not saying that the counselor is not a good counselor or a good therapist. I'm just saying when you're spread out that thin, I think you're not going to be able to get as many people in as is going to need your services. So it's going to create a void in that where people are not going to get the exact services they need.
Absolutely. And Lynn, I don't know that the government is going to stand up to take care of this.
No.
I think it's going to come down to social and business organizations. What we have got to do is work together as a society. We have to teach our children morality and ethics, and show them love and raise them right. That's one thing. And even though a lot of people have done that, their children have still been incarcerated. Right. So, you know, that's not a save all kind of thing. But when they're returning, there are a lot of us advocates across the United States. So many. We need to bind together and work together to make change.
Right. It takes a village, and one voice is, and the louder we can speak and the more speakers, I think the more people may start to listen, because you yourself have never been incarcerated. I mean, of course I have, so of course I'm going to speak out, but we need more people on board like yourself that has not been incarcerated and that, you know, does want to speak out and see changes, because you recognize that our system is not, it is a broken system.
It is very broken. The name of the book I'm in the process of writing is The United States Injustice System.
You know, my blog, that's one of the injustice is a word that I use on my Facebook page, is the federal criminal injustice system, because it is very unjust. And it starts with, like you said, the prosecutor, it goes all the way through. The only thing I can say, I did have I have had a good experience with the pretrial people in the federal system, which is basically the same probation office I'm under now. And my probation officer that I have now, she is absolutely amazing. She's very supportive. She wants the people she's over to actually succeed. And I truly appreciate that, because after everything I went through from the prosecutor standpoint, all the way through the BOP and the halfway house, I did not get that kind of support. And I will tell you, it's made a huge difference in the improvement of my anxiety and my PTSD just since January, since she became the person over me. So we do definitely need more good people working in the arena of justice, besides just advocates. I hope people that really want to help people would start taking some of those probation jobs. And, you know, there could be a lot of changes that would be positive.
It would be. I think media could play a good role.
But they only report what gets them, you know, the benefit, and telling someone's dirty laundry is more advantageous for people to read for some reason than telling, you know, positive stories. And we see that every day. So to wind this down, give us your final words of wisdom, Sandy.
We are not what we have done. We are not what we have done. We are not what people say we are. Those things are simply components. You are much more than you probably even realize. Everyone is worthy. Everyone is worthy. And I just wish everybody the very best and happiness and awareness.
So tell my listening audience, if they want to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing so?
Okay. My email is Sandy Freese. That's F as in Frank, REECE 63 @gmail.com. My business is Victory from Chaos Coaching. You can just put it in Google. I have a YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook. I have 2 groups, Factually Innocent and Injustice Reform and Reentry. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, just about every social media
Okay, and I'll put some of your links out there with this video. Thank you so much, Sandy, for coming on and talking to us today. And I really appreciate you. And, you know, I'm going to have you back again because I think there's so much more that we can add to this conversation. And I definitely want to hear, you know, my audience to know what else you have to say. Thank you again for coming on today, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Lynn.